The Olympic Stadium in Seoul was packed with people. Screens around the world showed the same scene. Today was the first challenge, a test of physical strength and endurance between Italian warrior Drak and human athlete Taehyung Choi. Drak stepped onto the field. His body gleamed in the sunlight. Metal plates covered his chest and limbs. Blue lights pulsed along his arms. When he walked, the ground seemed to shake. "He's huge," Ju whispered to Daehyun in the VIP box. "Size isn't everything," Daehyun replied, but he looked worried. Taehyung entered from the other side. He was tall for a human but much smaller than Drak. His body was lean and muscular, wearing only simple athletic clothes. He smiled and waved to the crowd. Ambassador Novik stood in the center. The first challenge has 3 parts: lifting strength, speed, and endurance. The competitor who wins 2 out of 3 will be the victor. For the first test, both competitors had to lift heavy weights. Drak easily picked up a metal bar loaded with 500 kilograms. He held it overhead with one hand, not even breathing hard. "Impressive," muttered Dr. Hyjin. "His cybernetic muscles must be titanium fiber-based." Taehyung approached his weights. The crowd grew quiet. He took a deep breath, grabbed the bar, and lifted. His face turned red with effort, but he managed to raise 300 kilograms to chest height before setting it down. "Round 1 goes to the Italian," announced Novik, looking pleased. Verox nodded smugly. As expected, human muscle is so limited. The second test was a 100-meter sprint. Drak crouched at the starting line, his leg enhancements humming with power. When the signal came, he exploded forward at incredible speed. But Taehyung was faster. His years of training, perfect form, and natural talent put him a full second ahead at the finish line. The crowd erupted in cheers. "How?" Drak asked, looking at his legs in confusion. "My speed enhancements are top tier." Taehyung just smiled. "Your enhancements are fast, but they're heavy, and they can't match the efficiency of a body built for running." Novik frowned. 1 victory each. The endurance test will decide. The final test was a marathon race through the city. As they prepared to start, dark clouds gathered overhead. Rain began to fall. "Should we delay?" asked Yoonji. "No need," said Drak. "My systems are waterproof." The race began. For the first 10 kilometers, Drak maintained a lead. His mechanical legs pumped like pistons, never slowing. But as the rain fell harder and the temperature rose, something strange happened. "He's slowing down," Ju said, watching the monitors. Hyjin leaned forward. "It's the heat. His systems are designed for efficiency, but they generate a lot of heat. In this humidity, he can't cool down fast enough." By kilometer 20, Taehyung had taken the lead. His body was covered in sweat, but this actually helped him cool down. He ran steadily, his breathing controlled. Meanwhile, Drak's movements became jerky. Steam rose from his joints in the rain. At kilometer 30, disaster struck. Drak collapsed on the road, his limbs twitching. Warning lights flashed across his body. Taehyung stopped running. He turned back and knelt beside the fallen Italian. "What is he doing?" Verox demanded. "He should finish the race." Taehyung checked Drak's condition, then lifted the heavy alien onto his shoulders. Slowly, steadily, he began carrying him back toward the stadium. "His systems are overheating," Taehyung explained when medical teams reached them. "He needs to cool down immediately." Later, in the medical center, Drak sat on a bed with cooling packs around his body. His eyes were dim with embarrassment. "Why did you help me?" he asked Taehyung. "You could have won easily." "Winning isn't worth someone's life," Taehyung replied. "Even someone who thinks they're better than me." Ambassador Novik approached Daehyun and Yoonji. "Your human won through a biological quirk. Sweat cooling is primitive, but apparently effective in certain conditions." Daehyun smiled. "It's not a quirk, Ambassador. It's an elegant solution that evolved over millions of years. Maybe being primitive has its advantages." Novik's lights blinked rapidly. For once, the confident alien seemed to have no response. 2 days after the demonstration, Earth's council called for another meeting with the Telians. The Grand Hall was even more crowded than before. News of the alien cybernetic abilities had spread worldwide, creating both excitement and fear. Chairwoman Yunji stood before the alien delegation. Ambassador Novik, we thank you for your offer to share your technology. However, we need more time to consider such a major change for our species. Novik's glowing eyes dimmed slightly. Time is a luxury. Your unmodified bodies age quickly. The sooner we begin, the more of your people we can save. Save. Daehyun stepped forward. We don't need saving. Verox made a sound like a mechanical laugh. Your bodies break easily. Your memories fade. You live barely a century. These are problems we solved long ago. Yunji raised her hand for calm. The Telians believe their path is better. We respect that. But before we follow them, we propose a test. A test. Novik tilted his head, his temple lights blinking rapidly. A series of challenges, Juwu explained, to compare our different approaches to life. Ambassador Novik conferred silently with the other Telians, their lights flashing in patterns. After a moment, he turned back. We accept. This will be educational for your people. His voice carried absolute confidence. What challenges do you propose? Verox stepped forward. Let us test physical strength. I will represent the Telians. Another alien with a transparent skull showing glowing brain enhancements spoke up. I, Ixel, will challenge you in computational ability and problem-solving. A third Telian with environmental sensors covering her body nodded. And I, Chem, will demonstrate superior survival skills in any environment. Yunji smiled. We accept these 3 challenges, and we propose 3 additional tests of our choosing. The aliens hesitated. Novik's eyes flashed brighter. What kind of tests? You'll find out when the time comes, Daehyun said. Just as we must adapt to unexpected challenges, so must you. After more silent communication, Novik nodded. Very well. What are the stakes of this competition? Yunji looked around the room at the human representatives. If you win, we will accept your offer to begin cybernetic enhancements, starting with our leaders and scientists. And if you win, Verox asked, sounding amused, you will share your technology with us, but on our terms. We will decide how and when to use it. No forced upgrades. Novik considered this. Agreed. When do we begin? 1 week, Yunji said. We need time to select our champions. After the meeting, Daehyun, Juwu, and Haijin gathered in the Defense Fleet headquarters. We need the best humans Earth has to offer, Daehyun said, pacing the room. People who show what unmodified humans can do at their peak. Haijin pulled up profiles on her tablet. For the strength challenge, I suggest Taeyoung Choi. He's an Olympic athlete who holds records in multiple events. Juwu nodded. I've heard of him. Didn't he swim across the English Channel and then run a marathon on the same day? That's him, Haijin confirmed. For the mental challenge against Ixel, we need Min Ji-yoon. The chess grandmaster, Daehyun asked. Yes, she's also a brilliant mathematician. Her thinking isn't just fast, it's creative in ways computers can't match. Juwu scrolled through more profiles. And for the survival challenge, we should call Junho Ryu. He's a wilderness expert who survived in every environment on Earth. Daehyun looked at the 3 profiles. Will they agree to this? I already contacted them, Haijin said. They all said yes immediately. They understand what's at stake. Juwu looked out the window at the Telian ship. And our 3 challenges, what will they be? Daehyun smiled. Things the Telians would never expect. Things that test what it truly means to be alive. That night, Earth sent out a global announcement. The competition would be broadcast worldwide. Humanity's future could depend on the outcome. In their ship orbiting Earth, the Telians prepared. They upgraded their champions with the latest enhancements, confident in their superiority. But on Earth, the human champions prepared differently. Taehyung trained his natural body. Minji studied human creativity. Chunho practiced working with nature instead of against it. The stage was set. The whole world waited to see if being human was enough. A small island off the Korean coast became the setting for the third challenge. Wilderness expert Junho Ryu would face Talian explorer Kem in a test of survival and adaptation. Helicopters dropped the two competitors on opposite sides of the uninhabited island. Each had only basic clothes, no tools, no food, no shelter. They would spend 3 days surviving, while cameras tracked their progress. Daehyun, Juwoo, and Heejin watched from the control center on the mainland. Kem has environmental scanning implants, Heejin explained, pointing to the screens. She can analyze soil, water, and plants instantly. She can see heat signatures of animals and detect weather changes. But Junho knows this land, Daehyun said. He studied survival his whole life. On the screens, both competitors began working immediately. Kem's approach was methodical. Her eye implants scanned the beach and forest. She touched plants and soil, her fingertip sensors analyzing their properties. Within an hour, she had identified safe water sources, edible plants, and potential shelter locations. Junho worked differently. He walked slowly, observing everything. He smelled the air, felt the direction of the wind, studied animal tracks. He seemed to be listening to the island itself. By evening, both had created shelters. Kem's was perfect, a precisely engineered structure of branches and leaves that maximized heat retention. Junho's was simpler but built in a natural depression that offered wind protection. They seem evenly matched, Juwoo said, Kem's technology versus Junho's experience. On the second day, the challenge became harder. Dark clouds rolled in from the sea. The island weather monitoring system showed a strong storm approaching. Kem detected the changing pressure and began upgrading her shelter. Her enhanced strength allowed her to move large branches and rocks quickly. Her implants helped her calculate the strongest design. Junho studied the clouds and the behavior of birds. He moved his camp to higher ground and into a small cave he had discovered. He gathered specific plants and berries, storing them carefully. When the storm hit, it was stronger than predicted. Rain pounded the island. Wind tore through the trees. Lightning flashed across the sky. Then something unexpected happened. A massive lightning bolt struck near Kem's shelter. The electromagnetic pulse disrupted her implants. On the monitoring screens, her vital signs fluctuated wildly. She's in trouble, Heijin said. The EMP affected her systems. Most of her enhancements are offline. Should we end the challenge? Juwoo asked, concerned. Daehyun was about to agree when another screen showed movement. Junho had left his shelter and was fighting through the storm, moving toward Kem's location. He's going to help her, Daehyun realized. Without her enhancements, Kem struggled. Her body, dependent on technology for so long, couldn't regulate temperature properly. She couldn't analyze her surroundings. She was lost in her own senses. Junho found her huddled under a broken shelter. Without hesitation, he helped her to her feet and guided her through the storm to his cave. There he built a fire using friction, a skill passed down through generations. He made a tea from the berries he had gathered, which helped stabilize Kem's systems. How did you know to prepare these things? Kem asked, her voice weak without its usual electronic enhancement. I didn't plan for lightning specifically, Junho explained. But my grandmother taught me to always prepare for the unexpected. Nature is full of surprises. By morning, the storm had passed. Kem's systems slowly came back online, but they weren't fully functional. She needed Junho's help to find food and clean water. When the helicopters arrived on the third day, both competitors were alive and well. But it was clear who had won. The human body seems fragile, Ambassador Novik admitted as they watched Junho help Kem into the helicopter. But it is remarkably resilient when technology fails. We don't just survive, Dayan said. We adapt. It's what humans have always done. Back at the control center, the score was announced. Humans 3, Tellian 0. But more important than the score was the growing respect in the Tellians' eyes. Your species has unexpected strengths, Novik said. Now we are curious about your 3 challenges. The United Earth Embassy in Seoul buzzed with tension. World leaders, scientists, and military officials filled the main hall. Captain Dayan stood near the front, with Ju at his side. Dr. Haijin Lee, Earth's top expert on human-computer interfaces, sat nearby, her notebook ready. What do you think they'll show us? Ju whispered. Something to impress us, something to make us feel small, Dayan replied. The doors slid open. Ambassador Novik entered, followed by 5 other Tellians. They walked with perfect posture, their movements smooth and precise. Up close, the mix of flesh and machine was even more striking. Some had transparent panels showing glowing circuits beneath. Others had extra limbs or sensors extending from their bodies. Welcome to Earth, said Chairwoman Yunji Kang, stepping forward. We are honored by your visit. Novik bowed slightly. The honor is ours. We have traveled across 17 star systems to find new civilizations. Your world is particularly interesting to us. Because we're so primitive, Ju muttered under her breath. Yunji gestured to the stage. You mentioned a demonstration. Yes. Novik smiled. We wish to show you the gifts that await your species. The Tellians spread out on stage. One of them, taller than the others, stepped forward. I am Engineer Verox, he said. I will show you what the future holds. He lifted a metal table with one hand as if it weighed nothing. Then he bent it in half like paper. The crowd gasped. My strength comes from synthetic muscle fibers, Verox explained. They are 10 times stronger than your natural muscles, and never tire. Another Tellian stepped forward. She had a silver band around her head and eyes that shifted colors like a rainbow. I can see infrared, ultraviolet, and radio waves, she said. I can zoom in to examine a cell or look at stars without a telescope. One by one, the aliens showed their abilities. One solved complex math problems instantly. Another demonstrated perfect memory, reciting everything said since they entered the room. A third changed his skin color at will, blending with his surroundings like a chameleon. Dr. Haijin scribbled notes frantically. Daehyun watched her face grow more troubled with each demonstration. Our species began as you are now, Verox told the crowd. Weak, limited, trapped in failing flesh. Now we live for hundreds of years. We feel no pain unless we choose to. We can survive in space without suits for short periods. Ambassador Novik raised his hands. And we offer this path to humanity. A gift of advancement. We can begin with your leaders and scientists. Within a generation, all humans could be elevated. The room fell silent. Yunji stepped forward again. This is a generous offer that requires careful thought. How have these changes affected your society? Novik seemed confused by the question. We eliminated inefficiency. War ended when we could share thoughts directly. Hunger vanished when we reduced our biological needs. And what did you lose? Haijin asked suddenly, standing up. All eyes turned to her. I don't understand, Novik said. What parts of yourselves did you leave behind? She clarified. Dreams? Intuition. The pleasure of food. The comfort of touch. The Tellians exchanged glances. Their lights flickered rapidly, as if they were communicating silently. We sacrificed nothing of value, Verox answered. Only weaknesses. After the meeting, Daehyun, Juwoo, and Haijin gathered in a small room. They're so sure they're better, Juwoo said, pacing. But they looked confused when you asked about what they lost. Haijin nodded. They've replaced 70% of their bodies with technology. I wonder if they even remember what it feels like to be fully alive. The council is impressed, Daehyun said. Some leaders are already talking about accepting their offer. We need time, Hygiene insisted. Before we change humanity forever, we should understand the full cost. Daehyun looked out the window at the Talion ship hovering in the sky. I agree, but how do we convince them we're not just being primitive and fearful? Ju smiled suddenly. We challenge them. If they're so superior, let them prove it. A competition? Hyjin asked. Yes, Ju said, but on our terms, not just theirs. Let's see if all that technology really makes them better than unmodified humans. The alarm blared through the Earth Defense Fleet headquarters. Captain Daehyun Kim jumped from his chair, spilling his coffee across the control panel. What is it? He asked, wiping the liquid with his sleeve. Officer Ju Park pointed at the main screen. Sir, we're picking up an unknown ship entering our solar system. It's big. Really big. Daehyun squinted at the readings. The object was moving at speeds no human craft could reach. Its energy signature was unlike anything in their database. Send out the standard greeting, he ordered, and alert Earth Command. The room fell silent as they waited. Minutes stretched like hours. Then the screen flickered. They're responding, said Ju. The image that appeared made everyone gasp. The alien had a humanoid shape, but gleaming metal covered most of its body. Its eyes glowed with a blue light. Wires and tubes connected to various parts of its head. When it moved, they could hear the soft whir of machinery. I am Ambassador Novik of the Talion Collective, the alien said in perfect English. We have traveled far to meet the species of this world. Daehyun stepped forward. I am Captain Daehyun Kim of Earth. We welcome peaceful contact. Novik tilted his head. A small antenna on his temple blinked rapidly. Interesting. Our scans show your species has minimal technological integration. Are you a primitive outpost? We are not primitive, Daehyun said, feeling slightly offended. Earth is our homeworld. We have space travel, advanced medicine, and artificial intelligence. Yet you remain unmodified. Novik's face showed something like pity. Your bodies are still fully organic. Ju stepped closer to Daehyun. Sir, I don't like this, she whispered. They're judging us by their standards. Daehyun nodded slightly but kept his eyes on the screen. We have chosen our own path of development, he told Novik. Some humans use prosthetics when needed, but most prefer their natural bodies. Ambassador Novik looked genuinely confused. Several lights on his neck flashed in patterns. Fascinating. The Talion Collective has pursued enhancement for over 2,000 years. We have replaced our weaknesses with strength. Our oldest members have less than 30% original organic matter. The control room staff exchanged worried glances. This was not just first contact with aliens. It was contact with beings who had almost abandoned their biological nature. We would like to meet in person, Novik continued. We bring gifts of advancement that your species might find useful. Daehyun felt a chill despite the warm room. We would be honored to meet. I'll need to contact our leaders to arrange a proper welcome. Of course. Novik's smile didn't reach his glowing eyes. We will enter orbit and await your signal. We look forward to helping your species overcome its limitations. The screen went dark. For a moment, no one spoke. They think we're broken, Ju finally said. They see us as something to fix. Daehyun turned to his communications officer. Contact Earth Command immediately, and get me Dr. Hyjin Lee from the Science Ministry. The cybernetics expert, asked the officer. Yes, I want her opinion on what we just saw. Daehyun looked at the empty screen, his mind racing. These Talions have given up their bodies for machines. They think it makes them better. Ju crossed her arms, and they want to help us do the same. Exactly. Daehyun walked to the window and looked out at the stars. But I wonder what they've lost in the process. Within hours, the massive Talion ship entered Earth orbit. It gleamed like a silver spider, with long arms extending from a central hub. Lights pulsed along its surface in hypnotic patterns. As Earth's leaders prepared for the first face-to-face meeting, Daehyun couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The Tellians clearly thought they were superior. They viewed humans as primitive for remaining unmodified. They may have replaced their hearts with machines, he told Ju as they watched the ship through a telescope. But I wonder if they remember what it feels like to be truly alive. The day after the final challenge, scientists at Earth's solar observatory noticed something unusual. A massive solar flare was building on the sun's surface, much larger than any recorded in human history. It will hit Earth's sector in approximately 10 hours, the head scientist told an emergency meeting of world leaders and Tellian representatives. How bad will it be? Yunji asked. The electromagnetic pulse will disable most electronic systems. Power grids will fail. Satellites will go offline. The scientist looked gravely at the Tellians. And any advanced cybernetics may be severely affected. Ambassador Novik's lights flashed in alarm patterns. Our ship's shielding can protect us. We must return immediately. As the Tellians prepared to leave Earth, Daehyun met with Haijin in her lab. Something doesn't feel right, he said. The Tellians seemed too worried. Haijin nodded. I've been studying their technology. Their cybernetic implants aren't just enhancements, they're life support. Many of their vital functions depend on technology. Their natural systems have atrophied from lack of use. If their implants fail completely, Daehyun began, they could die. Haijin finished. Before the Tellians could reach their ship, the solar flare hit, earlier than predicted. The sky turned red, then purple. Electronic devices everywhere sparked and died. Cars stopped in the streets. Lights went out across the city. On the landing pad, the Tellian ship's engines sputtered and failed. Inside the terminal building, Ambassador Novik collapsed. Other Tellians fell to the ground, their body lights flickering weakly. Their systems are failing. Ju shouted over the noise of panic. Daehyun took command. Get them inside, away from electronic equipment. Humans carried the helpless Tellians into a concrete shelter beneath the terminal. There, Haijin examined Novik with simple tools, a stethoscope, a flashlight, a manual blood pressure cuff. Their organic systems can't maintain homeostasis without technological assistance, she explained. Their natural lungs, hearts, and organs are too weak. Can you help them? Daehyun asked. Maybe, Haijin said, but I need to understand how their cybernetics connect to their biological systems, and I need someone who knows their technology. One Tellian scientist named Lyric was less affected than the others. His role as historian had required fewer enhancements. I can help, he said weakly. My knowledge database is partially organic, old technology we kept for archival purposes. Daehyun organized teams of humans. Some gathered supplies, batteries, simple electronic parts, medical equipment. Others set up hand-powered generators. Doctors arrived with manual ventilators and basic medicines. Haijin and Lyric worked through the night. They created simple mechanical devices to support Tellian breathing. They used human blood pressure monitors to regulate alien circulatory systems. They built hand-cranked power sources for the most critical implants. It's not elegant, Haijin told Daehyun as they worked, but it might keep them alive until their systems can recover. In the corner, Ju comforted a young Tellian whose arm enhancements had completely failed. I can't feel my fingers, the alien whispered. Try to wiggle them, Ju suggested. Your natural nerves are still there. They're just weak from disuse. By morning, none of the Tellians had died, though many remained in critical condition. Earth, too, was in chaos, but humans adapted quickly. People used bicycles instead of cars. They read by candlelight. They checked on neighbors who needed help. Novik regained consciousness and found Daehyun sitting beside him. You saved us, the ambassador said, his voice rough without its electronic enhancement. That's what humans do, Daehyun replied simply. Our ship, damaged but not destroyed. The basic structure is intact, but all advanced systems are fried. Novik tried to sit up. Without our technology, we are trapped here. Not trapped, Daehyun corrected. guests, and we'll help you rebuild, but differently this time. Differently. With backup systems, with technologies that don't replace your natural abilities but support them. Daehyun smiled. Maybe we have more to teach each other than either of us realized. Outside, the sun rose over a changed world. The crisis had only begun, but already humans and Tellians were finding new ways to work together, combining the best of biology and technology to face whatever came next. The Grand Hall of Seoul National University was silent as the second challenge began. Screens displayed complex mathematical equations that few in the audience understood. This was the battle of minds between Tellian cognitive specialist Ixel and human chess grandmaster Min Ji-yoon. Ixel sat perfectly still. The transparent dome of his skull revealed a brain half organic, half machine. Lights pulsed through artificial neural networks as he processed information. Across from him, Minji looked ordinary by comparison. She wore simple clothes and her long hair was tied back in a ponytail. Her only tools were paper, pencil, and her natural brain. "The first test is computational speed," announced a neutral judge. "Both competitors will solve the same set of 100 complex equations. Speed and accuracy will be measured." The problems appeared on their screens. Ixel's eyes began scanning rapidly. His brain lights flashed in patterns as his quantum computing implants processed the information. His fingers tapped solutions into a keypad. Minji worked differently. She wrote on paper, sometimes closing her eyes to think. Her approach seemed slow and inefficient compared to Ixel's mechanical precision. "She can't possibly win this round," Verox said to Novik. "Our cognitive enhancements process 1,000,000 calculations per second." Dr. Hyjin watched carefully. "Don't be too sure. Minji thinks differently." When the time ended, the results were displayed. Ixel had completed all 100 problems with 100% accuracy in just 12 minutes. Minji had finished only 87 problems in the same time, with 99% accuracy. "Round 1 to the Tellian," the judge announced. Minji didn't seem upset. She smiled and drank some water while waiting for the next test. "The second challenge tests pattern recognition and prediction," said the judge. "You will play a modified version of chess where the rules change every 5 moves in patterns you must discover." Ixel nodded confidently. "My predictive algorithms will identify the patterns quickly." The game began normally. Both players made standard opening moves. Then, after 5 moves, the rules changed. Knights could now move like bishops. After 5 more moves, pawns could move backward. Ixel adapted quickly, his computing systems identifying each new pattern. But Minji seemed to anticipate the changes before they happened. She made moves that seemed foolish at first, but became brilliant when the rules changed. "How is she doing that?" Ju asked. Hyjin leaned forward. "She's not just recognizing patterns, she's predicting human intentions. The rules aren't changing randomly. They're changing based on how a human judge would think." After 30 moves, Minji had a clear advantage. Ixel's lights flashed frantically as he tried new computational approaches. But 10 moves later, Minji had him in checkmate. "Round 2 to the human," the judge announced. The score was tied. The final test would decide the winner. "The last challenge tests creative problem-solving," said the judge. "You will be presented with an unsolved mathematics problem that has no known solution method. You have 1 hour to make progress." The problem appeared on the screen, a complex theorem that had stumped mathematicians for decades. Ixel immediately began systematic calculations, testing every known mathematical method. His approach was thorough and precise. Minji studied the problem for 15 minutes without writing anything. Then she began to draw shapes and patterns that seemed unrelated to the problem. "What is she doing?" Novik asked. "I don't know," admitted Daehyun. With 10 minutes left, Ixel had produced 50 pages of calculations, but had made little progress. Minji had only 3 pages of notes, filled with strange diagrams and seemingly random ideas. Then, with just 2 minutes remaining, Minji began writing rapidly. When time was called, both submitted their work to a panel of judges, human and Tellian mathematicians. After 30 tense minutes of review, the head judge stood up. While neither competitor solved the problem completely, the human Minji Yoon discovered a new approach that shows more promise. Her creative linking of different mathematical fields opens a path that our experts agree could lead to an eventual solution. The Tellian Ixel was thorough, but followed established paths that have previously failed. This round, and the second challenge overall, goes to the human. Ixel's lights dimmed. I don't understand. My methods were perfect. That's the problem, Minji said gently. Perfect isn't always right. Sometimes you need to be messy, to make intuitive leaps. Sometimes you need to feel the math, not just calculate it. Feel? Math. Ixel seemed genuinely confused. Minji smiled. Some things can't be enhanced with technology. They can only be experienced. Now it's our turn, Daehyun said as he stood before the gathered crowd. 3 days had passed since the survival challenge. The Tellians had time to repair their systems and recover their confidence. Ambassador Novik stepped forward. We are ready for your challenges. What tests have you designed? Daehyun smiled. Our first challenge is empathy. Empathy. Verox looked confused. How is that a test of advancement? Understanding and sharing the feelings of others is a complex skill, Yoonji explained. It's essential to human society. The first challenge took place at a wildlife sanctuary. Several animals had been injured in the recent storm. Some had broken wings, others had lost their homes. Each team will care for 3 injured animals, Hyjin explained. Success will be measured by the animal's recovery and stress levels. The Tellian representative, a medical specialist named Taylor, approached her assigned animals with technical precision. She scanned their injuries, calculated exact dosages of medicine, and constructed perfect splints. Her work was flawless. But the animals remained stressed. They pulled away from her touch. Their heart rates stayed high. Despite perfect medical care, they were not improving quickly. The human animal doctor, an older woman named Sunbak, took a different approach. Before treating each animal, she spoke softly to it. She moved slowly, letting the creatures see and smell her. Her medical treatment was less precise, but the animals responded to her gentle touch. They relaxed, ate better, and began to heal faster. The animals recognize her empathy, Juu explained to Novik. They trust her. Tella shook her head. I don't understand. My methods were superior. Healing isn't just about fixing physical damage. Sunbak said kindly. It's about making the patient feel safe. The second human challenge was artistic expression. Each side had to create art that would be judged not by technical skill, but by emotional impact on the audience. The Tellian artist used robotic arms to paint with perfect precision. His colors were scientifically selected for maximum visual appeal. The resulting picture of a sunrise over mountains was flawless. The human artist, a young man named Dongman, painted with broad, messy strokes. His sunrise was less perfect. Colors blended into each other, proportions were slightly off. But when both paintings were shown to a mixed audience of humans and Tellians, most felt drawn to the human's work. There's something in it that speaks to me, said one Tellian observer, sounding surprised. I can't explain it logically. That's art, Donghan said simply. It's not meant to be logical. The final human challenge was cooperation. 5 humans and 5 Tellians were placed in separate rooms with identical puzzles. Each puzzle could only be solved by working together. No single person had all the information needed. The Tellian team struggled. Without their usual neural linking technology, they had to communicate verbally. They argued about the best approach. Each believed their solution was optimal and should be followed. The human team started slowly but built momentum. They listened to each other's ideas. When they disagreed, they compromised. They laughed at mistakes instead of assigning blame. Within an hour, they had solved the puzzle. The Telian team was still arguing when time ran out. Later, Ambassador Novik sat with Yunji in a quiet room. "You have won all 6 challenges," he admitted. "This was unexpected." "What did you learn from our challenges?" Yunji asked. Novik's eyes dimmed in thought. "That there are forms of intelligence we haven't measured, skills we haven't valued." He paused. "Your empathy test, I couldn't have passed it myself. My emotional sensors were removed centuries ago. They were considered inefficient. And now I wonder what else we've lost." Novik looked at his mechanical hands. "We pursued perfection so single-mindedly that we forgot to ask what perfection means." Yunji smiled. "Perhaps that's the most important discovery of all." Outside, Daehyun and Juwoo watched the sunset over Seoul. "Do you think they understand now?" Juwoo asked. "They're beginning to," Daehyun replied. "Understanding isn't just about processing information. It's about experiencing life in all its messy, imperfect glory." 6 months after the solar flare, Earth had largely recovered. Power systems were back online. Communications networks functioned again. People returned to their normal lives, though many kept the simple skills they had learned during the crisis. In a new building at Seoul National University, humans and Telians gathered to sign a historic treaty. The room was designed to accommodate both species comfortably. The lighting was soft enough for human eyes, but bright enough for Telian sensors. Ambassador Novik looked different now. Some of his cybernetic parts had been rebuilt, but others were gone. His face showed more of its natural features. When he moved, it was with less mechanical precision, but more grace. Chairwoman Yunji welcomed the gathered representatives. "Today marks a new chapter in the relationship between our species. We have learned much from each other, not always in ways we expected." Daehyun sat with Juwoo and Haijin in the front row. Behind them were the human champions, Taeyoung, Minji, and Jumno, who had demonstrated the value of unmodified humanity. "The past 6 months have been challenging," Novik acknowledged when it was his turn to speak, "but also enlightening. My people came to Earth believing we were superior in every way. We were wrong." He raised his hand, which now had only minimal enhancements. "In pursuing perfection through technology, we nearly lost ourselves. When the solar flare hit, we faced extinction not because we were too biological, but because we weren't biological enough." The treaty they signed that day was simple in principle. Earth would share its planet with the stranded Telians. The aliens would share their technology, but in a new form, designed to work with human biology, not replace it. "We call it integration, not replacement," Haijin explained later to a group of students. She had been appointed head of the new Human Telian Research Institute. "The goal is technology that enhances natural abilities while preserving what makes us human or Telian." The first products of this collaboration were already in use. Medical implants that worked with the body's natural healing processes, memory aids that supported brain function without taking over, sensory enhancements that could be removed when not needed. "The key is choice," Daehyun told a reporter. "Technology should serve life, not the other way around." In a park near the institute, Teli